That Saturday morning, Madison Carter walked into her parents' house in Franklin with her arms heavy, each hand carrying carefully wrapped boxes stacked high. The long wooden dining table gleamed under the chandelier, already crowded with relatives, the air filled with the clink of silverware and the sugary scent of pecan pie. Her heart thumped with both hope and dread. This was supposed to be her moment. 5 years away. 5 years of building herself from nothing into someone worth noticing today. Finally, she'd prove it. The gifts she'd spent weeks curating sat at her side like trophies. A vintage Rolex her father once admired in a catalog. A diamond bracelet her mother used to sigh over in jewelry stores. A full family vacation package for her sister Victoria and her kids. Even a generous investment in her brother Ryan's business. Thoughtful, expensive, undeniable. Today, they would see her not as the overlooked daughter, but as a woman who had made it. Boxes were passed around the table. Laughter bubbled up as colorful wrapping paper flew across the room. Victoria's children squealed with delight at their new toys. Her father nodded proudly at a new golf set. Her mother cooed over a silk scarf. Madison forced a smile, waiting patiently, her chest tight with anticipation. Surely, when her turn came, there would be something for her too, a token, a gesture, proof she belonged again. But the pile of gifts grew smaller. The chatter swelled. And her place at the table remained empty. Finally, her voice cracked through the noise, trying to sound casual. "Hey, where's mine?" Her mother, Evelyn, looked up. For a split second, their eyes met. Then Evelyn smirked, her lips curling with disdain. "In the trash." The words landed like a slap. For a heartbeat, the room froze. Then Victoria threw her head back, laughing, sharp and cruel. Her husband chuckled. And soon the table erupted, mocking, loud, merciless. The sound tore through Madison's chest, each laugh another knife twisting. Even Samantha, her youngest sister, tried to cover her giggles with her hand but failed, her shoulders shaking. Madison's hands trembled on the last box she had given away, the ribbon slipping loose beneath her fingers. Her vision blurred, but she refused to let them see tears. Inside, her heart splintered years of silence, years of clawing her way up without them, reduced in a single cruel joke. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She simply pushed her chair back, the wooden legs scraping against the polished floor with a screech that silenced their laughter. Without a word, she walked out. The heavy oak door clicked shut behind her, cutting off their jeers. Outside, the cool Tennessee air hit her lungs like ice. Her pulse pounded, her chest burning with humiliation and rage. Every step away from that house felt like tearing free from chains she'd worn her entire life. But as she gripped her car door handle, a single thought cut through the storm. This isn't the end. This is just the beginning. The betrayal at that table wouldn't break her, it would define her. The Tennessee sky was still gray when Madison drove away from her parents' house, but her mind wasn't in the present. The humiliation at the table had ripped open old wounds, and with every mile of highway, the memories clawed their way back. She had been born into a family where roles were cast early. Victoria, the eldest, was the shining star straight A's, debate team captain, violin prodigy. Every ribbon she won was framed and hung on the fridge like a shrine. Her parents, Evelyn and Richard, would beam with pride, their voices booming with praise as neighbors congratulated them on raising such a gifted daughter. And Madison? She was the shadow trailing behind. She remembered being 16, clutching the crisp certificate from a regional writing contest, her heart pounding with the thrill of victory. She had run home that afternoon, bursting through the door, breathless. "Look what I won!" she shouted, waving the paper high. Her mother barely glanced up, the phone pressed to her ear, gushing to an aunt about Victoria's newest scholarship. Her father didn't even set down his newspaper. "That's great, kiddo," he muttered. "Pass the salt. Dinner's ready." The words sliced through her chest. Madison's smile faltered, the certificate crumpling slightly in her hand. She slipped quietly down the hall to her room, the walls muffling the sound of her mother's laughter and her sister's violin practice echoing from the living room. That night, she stared at the certificate under the dim light of her desk lamp, wondering if her voice would ever matter in that house. It wasn't just that day. The neglect became a pattern. At summer picnics in Centennial Park, Victoria would perform violin solos near the Parthenon replica, drawing a crowd of strangers. Their mother clapped until her hands turned red, their father recording every note. Madison would sit off to the side with her notebook, sketching stories worlds where sisters fought side by side instead of against each other, where forgotten girls became heroes. "Read this, Mom," she'd beg, tugging at Evelyn's sleeve, her notebook pages trembling with words. "Later, honey," Evelyn would say absently, eyes locked on Victoria, tuning her bow. "Your sister's about to play the finale." The rejection didn't come in screams or punishments. It came in silence, in the absence of acknowledgement, and over time, silence hurt more than any insult. By high school, Madison stopped asking. She stopped showing them her stories, stopped trying to catch her father's eye when she passed his recliner, stopped waiting for her mother's praise. She learned to fold her dreams small, tucking them into the margins of her notebooks where no one else could see. But fate had a way of nudging her toward the right people. That year, she met Lauren in English class, a sharp-eyed girl with ambition burning hotter than anyone Madison had ever known. They bonded over late-night essay edits, swapping notes on Southern Gothic literature, and whispering about futures bigger than Franklin, Tennessee. "Why chase their approval?" Lauren once asked, twirling a pencil during lunch. "Build your own stage, Maddie. Write your own story. Let the world hear it." Now, those words lodged deep in Madison's chest. For the first time, someone saw her not as Victoria's sister, but as herself. And from then on, the fire inside her burned differently, not for her family's praise, but for the chance to prove to the world and to herself that she was more than the shadow they left behind. When Madison packed her bags after graduation, she didn't look back at Franklin. The hugs from her parents were stiff, Evelyn already whispering to Victoria about her law school interview, Richard checking his watch for the next football game. Madison felt invisible in her own family photo. She drove east to Nashville with nothing but 2 suitcases, a box of journals, and the fierce promise she had made to herself, "I will never be their shadow again." For the first year, she lived on Lauren's lumpy futon in a cramped East Nashville loft. The place reeked of old takeout and coffee grounds, laptops stacked in every corner. Nights blurred into dawns as they coded side by side, sweat beading on their foreheads in the thick southern humidity. They chased a wild idea, an app that could connect Tennessee's creative community, from struggling songwriters in Broadway bars to local families trading recipes, to women with ideas dismissed as hobbies. Money was always short. Madison picked up part-time gigs handing out flyers at concerts, serving drinks at honky-tonk bars while Lauren juggled freelance coding projects. More than once, Madison lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan clattering overhead, wondering if she had made a colossal mistake. But then she'd remember Evelyn's smirk, Victoria's violin solos, Richard's silence. And she'd get up, make another pot of coffee, and keep building. The rejections nearly crushed them. Investor after investor leaned back in cafe chairs, sipping lattes with polite but dismissive smiles. "It's too niche. Come back when you have traction." Not scalable enough. Each no stung like a wasp bite. Madison would walk out of those meetings with her chest hollow, her knuckles white around her notebook. But Lauren had a mantra that never failed. Their no is just fuel for the fire. And fire was exactly what they became. The breakthrough came on a sticky Tuesday night in a dimly lit honky-tonk. They launched a small beta test, expecting maybe a handful of curious onlookers. But within hours, connections sparked like wildfire, a fiddler matched with a lyricist, a venue owner booking talent on the spot, locals swapping stories that went viral across town. Word spread overnight through Tennessee's creative underbelly. By the weekend, their user count had doubled, then tripled. Investors who once rolled their eyes were suddenly calling back. Meetings shifted from skeptical nods to eager handshakes. Madison and Lauren found themselves pitching in downtown lounges where the bourbon flowed freely, contracts slid across tables, and strangers raised glasses in their honor. The app skyrocketed, weaving communities together in ways no one had imagined. It wasn't just a business, it became a movement. Madison would sit in their tiny office, watching users log in from Franklin, Memphis, Chattanooga, even as far as Atlanta, and feel the sting of every childhood dismissal fade into something else. Vindication. 2 years later, they inked a deal with a Silicon Valley giant, $500 million to acquire the platform. Madison's share alone was $200 million, even after carving out generous equity for their small team. She didn't just buy a loft overlooking the Cumberland River. She bought freedom. No loans, no debts, no strings. But it wasn't just about her. With Lauren, she launched a foundation grants for young women with big ideas, scholarships for girls who were told they weren't enough, coding boot camps for dreamers who had no place to start. Within months, 40 women across Tennessee had funding in their hands, their eyes shining with the same hunger Madison once carried. One night, standing on the rooftop of her new loft, the neon glow of downtown Nashville buzzing beneath her, Madison whispered to herself, "They'll never see me as the failure again." But she didn't know yet soon. Her family would come knocking. It started with a phone call that shouldn't have come. Madison was at her new office in East Nashville, sunlight spilling across glass walls, when her phone buzzed. The name lit up the screen. Evelyn Carter. For a moment, Madison thought she was hallucinating. She hadn't heard her mother's voice in years. Against every instinct screaming, "Don't answer," she swiped. "Madison, honey," Evelyn's tone was thick with syrup. "We've missed you. Things are different now. Come home for the family party, please." The words sank like hooks into Madison's chest. She should have laughed and hung up. But instead, her fingers tightened around the phone. Maybe, just maybe, they had changed. Maybe they would finally see her, not as the forgotten daughter, but as the woman who had built an empire from the ground up. For the next 2 weeks, she prepared like someone bracing for battle. She chose gifts that spoke volumes: a vintage watch for Richard, the one he used to circle in catalogs but never bought; a diamond tennis bracelet for Evelyn; a week-long Key West getaway for Victoria and her family; an educational fund for Samantha's kids; and even a $50,000 seed check for her brother Ryan's startup. Each gift was proof, each one saying louder than words, "I've made it. I am worthy." When she pulled into the Carter home on the morning of the party, the old oak trees whispered with memories she'd buried. She smoothed her dress, gathered the gleaming boxes, and walked inside. The house hadn't changed. The same photographs of Victoria's milestones lined the hallway, her debate trophies shining in the glass cabinet. Madison's stomach twisted, but she forced a smile as she entered the dining room. The party roared to life. Children ripped into packages, laughter bouncing off the walls. Victoria preened as her kids shrieked with delight over their new toys. Evelyn clapped. Richard chuckled. Samantha smirked quietly in the corner. Madison set down her pile of gifts, her pulse racing with anticipation. This was her moment. Wrapping paper flew. Applause filled the air. One by one, her carefully chosen gifts were opened, admired, celebrated by everyone but her. Madison's chest constricted as the pile dwindled, then disappeared. The room buzzed with chatter, but her seat remained empty, her hands bare. She cleared her throat, her voice tight but steady. "Where's mine?" The room hushed. Evelyn's eyes flicked up from across the table. For a heartbeat, silence hung heavy. Then, her lips curved into that same cruel smirk Madison remembered too well. "In the trash." The words slammed into Madison like a freight train. Victoria's laugh cut through the air, shrill and mocking, followed by Richard's awkward chuckle and Samantha's muffled giggle. Soon, the entire table erupted, voices rising. Cruel. Merciless. Their laughter wasn't just at her expense. It was a declaration: "You will always be the joke." Madison's vision blurred. Her palms pressed into the polished wood, nails digging crescents into the surface. She wanted to scream, to hurl every truth she'd buried. Instead, she inhaled sharply, pushed her chair back with a screech, and stood. The laughter faltered. Chairs creaked. Eyes followed her as she turned, each step deliberate, her heels striking the hardwood like drumbeats. She didn't look back. The oak door closed behind her with a resounding click, sealing the house and them on the other side. Outside, the Tennessee air was heavy and hot, pressing against her chest. Her hands shook, but not from weakness. This wasn't the breaking point. It was ignition. They think I'm still the shadow, she thought, sliding behind the wheel. They have no idea who I've become. No idea what's coming. As she pulled out of the driveway, the echoes of their laughter still clung to her skin. But under it, something else burned cold. Unshakable fury. The very next morning, Madison's phone buzzed against her kitchen counter. She glanced at the screen and froze. Victoria. Her thumb hovered over decline. After the laughter, the mockery, the humiliation only hours ago, the last thing Madison wanted was her sister's voice. But curiosity tugged, sharp and relentless. She pressed accept. Victoria's face filled the video call. Streaked with mascara, her eyes swollen red. She was in her Franklin living room, blinds drawn, the air behind her thick with chaos. She looked nothing like the golden child Madison had grown up chasing. Madison? Victoria choked, her voice breaking. I need your help. Please, it's urgent. Madison said nothing, her expression unreadable. My husband's gambling. It's spiraled out of control. The debts. Victoria's breath hitched. The banks are calling. We could lose everything. I need $100,000. Please, just this once. The number hung in the air like smoke. Madison leaned back in her chair, the memory of last night slicing through her like glass, their laughter, her mother's smirk, Victoria's bark of mockery. In the trash. Victoria's voice cracked again, desperation dripping through the screen. I'm sorry about the party. It was stupid, okay? A joke. I didn't mean it. I got caught up in the moment. A bitter laugh bubbled in Madison's chest. A joke? She repeated softly. Her eyes narrowed. You called me a joke, Victoria. All of you did, in front of everyone. Victoria shook her head frantically, her hands clasped together like she was kneeling through the camera. I was wrong, I was jealous. Your gifts, your confidence, it was too much. Please, Madison, we're family. I'll make Mom and Dad see you differently. Just help me. Her words dripped with the same manipulation Madison had heard her whole life. Always the spotlight on Victoria, always her needs taking center stage. Madison thought of the nights she and Lauren spent coding until dawn, the rejection letters, the humiliation swallowed in silence, all while Victoria never once picked up the phone to ask if she was okay. Now she wanted $100,000, like it was pocket change. Madison's jaw tightened. Slowly, deliberately, she leaned closer to the screen. Her voice was calm, icy, cutting sharper than any scream could. You want $100,000? She paused, her lips curving into a cold smile. Go get it from the trash. Victoria's eyes widened, her mouth falling open. Panic flickered across her face. Don't do this. Please, Madison. I'm begging you. But Madison was already done. She ended the call with a single tap. The screen went black, the silence heavy and final. Her chest heaved, adrenaline surging through her veins. She didn't cry. She didn't waver. She opened her contacts list and, one by one, blocked every number. Victoria's, Evelyn's, Richard's, even Samantha's. And finally, Ryan's. His silence at the party had been as loud as their laughter. The weight lifted like chains falling from her shoulders. For the first time in her life, Madison wasn't the forgotten child begging for scraps. She was the woman with the power to say no. She called Lauren. Her best friend's face lit up the screen, brow arched. It's done, Madison said, her voice steady, almost serene. I told Victoria to dig in the trash for her bailout. Then I blocked them all. Lauren's lips curved into a slow, proud smile. Good. They don't get to leech off your shine anymore. No. Madison let out a long exhale, her hands trembling not from weakness but from release. For years, her family had written her story as the afterthought. Tonight, she had taken the pen back. And this time, she wasn't writing them in. 6 months passed. The leaves along the streets of Franklin turned brittle and red, crackling underfoot as autumn swept in. And with it came the downfall of the Carter family. Victoria was the first to crumble, her perfect image as the golden daughter shattered when her husband's gambling debts spiraled into public scandal. Creditors seized their home, and headlines splashed her humiliation across Nashville news outlets. Prominent attorneys' career collapses under financial ruin. The law firm that once paraded her as their rising star quietly cut ties. Soon after, her marriage dissolved. Samantha whispered to neighbors that the custody battle was vicious. Victoria's children shuttled between homes like pieces on a chessboard. Madison didn't call. She didn't need to. The newspapers told her enough. Richard fell next. His small construction company, once steady and respected, began to rot from the inside. Clients pulled contracts after learning he had co-signed Victoria's secret loans. The office that had anchored Franklin's business district for decades was gutted, the front door slapped with a foreclosure notice. Richard had always been the steady hand at the table, the quiet provider, but Madison remembered his chuckle at her humiliation, the way he looked away when she searched his face for defense. Now, silence was all he had left. Evelyn, the matriarch, unraveled last. For years, she had built her reputation on appearances, potlucks, country club socials, charity galas where she boasted about Victoria's accolades and Richard's stability. But gossip spreads faster than smoke in Franklin. Soon, invitations stopped coming. Once admiring neighbors whispered behind manicured hedges, watching her walk alone through grocery aisles, her once practiced smile faltering under fluorescent lights. The woman who had smirked "in the trash" now lived in the quiet shame of being invisible. As for Samantha, she slipped out of sight entirely, moving to another town. And Ryan, the brother who once tried half-heartedly to bridge the gap left for Knoxville. He never called. Madison never expected him to. Their collapse was complete. And Madison? She didn't gloat. She didn't chase headlines or seek revenge in tabloids. She simply lived. In East Nashville, her new foundation's office buzzed with energy. The walls rang not with mockery, but with ideas, young women pitching startups, songwriters sketching lyrics, coders hammering out lines of code late into the night. Madison walked those halls with Lauren, their footsteps echoing like a promise. 40 grants had become 60, then 80. Girls who were once dismissed as too much or not enough now launched businesses, wrote books, built apps of their own. Her loft overlooking the Cumberland River no longer felt empty. Its walls held art from local galleries, photographs of foundation launches, snapshots of smiling faces she had helped lift. Family photos were absent, and she didn't miss them. She had built her own family, the kind chosen, not inherited. Some nights, standing on her rooftop with the city lights glittering like 1,000 small victories, Madison would replay the moment Evelyn smirked, "In the trash." For years, those words haunted her, cut her open. Now they only reminded her of the day she stopped chasing scraps, the day she reclaimed herself. Her phone lay silent, their numbers blocked. She never unblocked them. Not when the scandals hit, not when the businesses collapsed, not when the invitations to reconcile inevitably stopped. She didn't need apologies that came too late. She had written her own ending. And when people asked her students, mentees, strangers at speaking events what family meant, she answered with steady eyes. Sometimes the only way to love yourself is to walk away. Some families aren't worth saving, but you can always build a new one. She would pause, letting the words sink in. Then, almost like an invitation, she'd add, "So, what about you? Have you ever had to cut someone out to save yourself? Did you forgive? Or did you walk away?" The silence after that question always carried weight. Because deep down, everyone knew. Madison Carter was no one's shadow anymore. Asterisk. She walked into that house carrying gifts, and walked out carrying scars. For years, Madison Carter was the forgotten daughter, the shadow behind Victoria's spotlight, the silence behind Evelyn's smirk, the afterthought at Richard's table. They laughed at her pain, dismissed her victories, tossed her worth in the trash. But what they didn't know was that fire is born in the dark. While they mocked, she built. While they ignored, she fought. And while they laughed, she rose. From a futon in East Nashville to a glass tower above the Cumberland, Madison rewrote her story not with their validation, but with her own triumph. When Victoria came crawling back, begging for $100,000, Madison didn't scream. She didn't cry. She answered with the same cruelty they once gave her. Go get it from the trash. And for the first time in her life, the power was hers. 6 months later, the Carters crumbled. Careers destroyed. Reputations shattered. The perfect family undone by their own cruelty. And Madison? She thrived. Her foundation lifted women who had been told they weren't enough. She built a new family, one of choice, one of strength, one of fire. Because some families aren't worth saving. Sometimes the bravest act of love is cutting the cord. So I ask you, if it were you, would you forgive? Or would you walk away? Share your truth in the comments. Like this video if Madison's story lit a fire in you. Subscribe for more stories of betrayal, revenge, and redemption. This was Madison's story. But maybe, just maybe, it's yours too. Asterisk.